your affairs in order before the contract ends. Hey, I am Chuck the bureaucrat, and you guys might know that I was working on a contract job from like March to the end of November in 2023. And as that contract came up for recompete, the incumbent company did not win, and I was not one of the employees selected to stay on the contract. Probably for the best. I mean, I'm happy and excited about what 2024 holds, so don't worry about me. But I wanted to share some collective advice that my contract teammates had for those of us who are new to the contracting world. Most of this advice has to do with the simple fact that whether you get hired by the new company or not, you are likely going to lose access to the employee portal of your original company. And at the same time, if you don't get hired by the new company, it's likely you're going to lose access to a lot of information that is available through the Department of Defense. And then there's some basic fact of life stuff that seems kind of obvious once somebody tells you, but I didn't think of it on my own. Now, as we get started, let me give you a little bit of context here. This advice was shared in the 3 to 4 weeks leading up to the contract transition, that period where nobody really knew who was going to be selected to continue and who wasn't. All right, so first things first, anticipate that you are going to lose access to the outgoing company's HR tools. Download 3 or 4 of your recent pay stubs. I mean, this is really just for your records. Technically, nobody should be asking you what your old salary was. But without these old pay stubs, you're stuck relying on, bank statements or W-2 forms. And the nice thing about pay stubs is they're relatively current. They have the amount of tax withholding that the company has done, and they don't contain a lot of other personal information. Next, download your 401k report. A 401k is an employer-managed retirement account, kind of like the thrift savings program. So when you leave an employer, the 401k that they've been managing for you, it essentially gets frozen. You can't make contributions to it. You can't take loans against it. If you end up with a new company that offers their own 401k, you'll probably want to roll your old 401k into the new one. If you aren't employed, you might want to roll that 401k money into an IRA of some form, or you might want to just keep an eye on that account, leave it where it is, and decide what to do with it later. If you have a flexible savings account or a health savings account, collect information on those too. In fact, a lot of lifelong military people have never had an FSA before in their lives, so it might be a good idea to check to see if you even have one. Next, gather up phone numbers and email addresses from the outgoing company with particular attention on the HR and payroll folks, plus some of the company leadership, the guys above the program manager who are still going to be part of the company even though they don't have the contract anymore. All right, now that's about the outgoing company. Now, here's a couple things to document about yourself from the government. Get your security information. Lots of potential employers are going to want to know about your security clearance level, so you want to know when it was done and what organization did it. Next, copy down your DoD ID number from your CAC card. That thing's also called an EDIPI. The thing about this is that DoD issues you that number the first time that you're enrolled in DEERS, and it never changes. For instance, my son got his DoD ID number when he was my dependent. And then when he went off to basic, same ID number. If he gets out and takes a contract job, same number. And if he then goes on and gets a government job, same number. So in theory, if you know your EDIPI, it should be easier for you to get your CAC card in the future. Oh, and by the way, it's on your retiree card too. Also, dig up your DD-214. I mean, it's always useful to have it, but you might not have laid hands on it lately. Okay, now let's talk about some things that are going to sound like normal job search issues, but they have a unique flavor in this contract transition environment. Number one, the incoming company is probably going to have 1 or 2 meetings with the government. And depending on where you work, the first impression that you make with the new company might be when they walk past the desk where you work. So you might want to spruce up the appearance of your workspace and your business attire, just in case. On the topic of clothing, you might want to check the fit of your suits. I don't know, but for some reason, retired Army colonels who are about 8 months into retirement seem to be shaped differently than they were when the transition assistance folks suggested that they should start buying a wardrobe. But I don't know, maybe it's just me. Also, give your resume a polish. I mean, by this point, you're probably using all the right words, you've probably spelled them appropriately, and the individual sentences are probably coherent. So the insightful thing that the experienced guys recommended was make sure your resume makes sense. Are there mysterious gaps? Are there strange discontinuities? Or is there information that really just doesn't belong? My recommendation would be, even before you look at your own resume, look at a bunch of example resumes. Get a feel for what's good and bad, and then look at your resume with fresh eyes and adopt best practices. You also might want to take some time to ask for references. I mean, on one hand, you're just keeping your employment information fresh and up to date, but you also might run into the situation where the incoming company can't afford to keep you, even though the government wants to keep you and holds you in high regard. Good recommendation is always helpful, but in this situation, it can also help to explain why your resume may look the way it does. And finally, 2 thoughts about cleaning up your affairs. First, if you're winding down on the transition, you might want to start thinning out the things at your workspace. Personally, I did not want to drag multiple boxes out on my last day in the office. I mean, it was depressing enough as it was. And then, I've talked a lot in this video about collecting information, but you also might want to think about sharing information. Give your personal email or phone number out to people who you would want to reach out to you. You never know. I mean, this business is all about relationships, and you want to make it easy for people to find you. Oh, and if you want to do a little bit of networking with social media, watch this video on how to leverage LinkedIn.